All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Vibration Translation. This is going to be number 7. Today we have Natalia Grace. And Natalia Grace is a navigator of the holographic field, a translator of consciousness, and she helps individuals to expand awareness, shed light on their shadows, rewire patterns. And she had in 2018 a spontaneous Kundalini, also known as a light body activation. And she received a blueprint of quantum energy technology. So part of her offerings focus on quantum energy work, light body or Kundalini integration, human design readings, conscious relationship support. And part of her purpose is to bridge between the physical, to be a bridge between the physical and the spiritual and find resonance between those two. So Natalia, would you like to add anything to that intro?
I think that's perfect. So first of all, thank you for having me here. I'm really excited.
Yes, I'm excited too. All right, awesome. So I want to start with your awakening, right? So you had that 2018 Kundalini massive awakening, which we'll get into more details about. But first, when did you start to wake up? Did you have a wake up moment in your life?
Yeah, I think that's a powerful question because I feel like if I look back into my life, I don't think it's like one specific event. I think it's just been a different series of events, like small activations. And I think that there were definitely moments where I felt that my soul just plugged me in into the timeline of awakening, where I had a few chances before, but I don't know if I was ready. Maybe it wasn't, I didn't have I don't know, the mechanics for it. But definitely there were points where I had that, yeah, like that loud voice of like, okay, you got to make that shift. But basically, like when I was a child, I always felt that I had that like spiritual touch. I was always seeking God in a specific way. I don't have very strong memories due to trauma from like up until I was maybe 9 years old. But when I first started having those memories, as a child, I always was in prayer mode. Like I used to pray, and it's funny because my mom is a religious, and I kind of grew up in a Catholic family, but she was the only one that was really religious, spiritual, and she would like laugh. She's like, "You're gonna turn out a nun or something," because I would spend a lot of time just praying after school instead of playing. I'm like in church or just praying to God and speaking to God. And now that I look back, is that I feel like I was always having that seeking God in a specific way, like being in communion with God. But that was the best way that I knew because I was growing up in that environment. And definitely I had like, premonitions and dreams. I would sometimes like open up portals in my sleep. Like there were those really weird things. I definitely didn't understand what they were back then. But now I look back and I understand that. But later on, like when I became, a teenager, and then, like kind of the identity crisis started coming up and very deep, dark feelings of like depression and things like that. And then, just starting to get out into the world, wanting to belong, having a first boyfriend, I definitely shut that down and completely forgot all about it.
Did you feel like you shut it off because it just wasn't part of the normal stages of growing up? Like you said, getting a boyfriend, this and that.
Yeah, I would say I feel it was more of like a shift of like now I can interpret it as a shift of energy that just and getting into the allure. Like that's kind of what I call it, the allure of this world, because this world wants to distract us, wants to yeah, the false matrix. It just wants us to get pleasure from different things. And I think that's normal maybe as teenagers, that sometimes that's the teenager crisis where, you just start doing things that you're like, where is that coming from? Because you're testing the boundaries. So I feel that's kind of it, like maybe the social pressure or just yeah, just friends and things like that. So it just got me out of it.
Did you feel like that part of you, you said you opened up portals or really, when I heard you say that you grew up and praying a lot as a kid, did you have other kids like in your, I guess maybe did you have a Christian community with other kids that were praying a lot, or is this just something you really latched onto? Or I don't know if latched onto is the best word, but that really inspired you, prayer.
Yeah, I feel that my childhood was really painful. Like I had a lot of issues. Like even I had issues belonging in school. Like I really didn't like school. I was bullied, so I had a lot of yeah, I didn't have much, friends in that sense, like a lot of betrayal happening. So I wouldn't necessarily say that I had, support in that way, a community support. It was very like a me alone, an alone journey. And even with my parents, like I felt with all the love that my mom has, like she didn't know what she didn't know, so she couldn't really support me on that level that maybe I needed.
Okay, I see. So you kind of took to, okay, prayer, God, when I'm by myself, this is what I can do to feel, some kind of support. And I also wanted to ask about the opening portals as a kid. What do you mean by opening portals in your dreams? I'm just intrigued.
Yeah, now that I look back, I remember them, but it was literally opening. Like I'm just gonna give an example of one dream I had. So I was given a key, and when I by being of light, and I was handed that key, and then there was like this huge corridor in our house. And then when I was given that key, I was like, okay, you got to go there. And when I went there, I just pressed the key, and then it opened up like in the house. It just opened up to another world, another realm. And it was all like, I don't know if it's not really necessarily like Avatar like, but it was where all is one. Like it felt like there were a lot of animals and a lot of trees, and everything is kind of blended in together. And it was just that feeling of joy and happiness. And so that's just one example of, opening up portal. But definitely when I started doing, a lot of regression work for myself, there were definitely like maybe different experiences as well that I had for sure.
Okay, that is a very, very cool. Thank you for sharing. And another question is, did you have knowledge or experience of other lifetimes prior to that 2018 awakening?
Um, yes, I did have um not when I was a kid. So basically when I became like again when I was a teenager, a little bit maybe when I was like 16, 17, I had a just I don't know, now I say like, okay, my third eye just activated again, just randomly, and I was seeing through the spirit world. So I was able to have that access, and I didn't know what that meant back then. So I definitely also freaked out in that sense. And then I had to regulate it in my own way or maybe shut it down. And then a little bit later, I had a very massive incident. I don't know if I want to go into that right now or maybe later.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. Okay. So in that moment, I just started finding, when I was maybe in high school, end of maybe when I was 18, 19, I started finding kind of comfort in meditation. And, I started reading a lot of books of Buddhism, even like those basic, I feel like the primary level of spirituality, which is, Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, things like that. And things started making sense to me because I was in a very depressive state where I was like, I knew there's something wrong with the world. And I always felt ungrounded. And I remember it was fascinating because I was talking to a friend of mine, and we would share that, but we didn't know the word grounding. We're like, as if we're not here, as if like I can't feel this word. Like we used to use those words, and it didn't make any sense. But so that was the initiation of the journey for me and into the spirituality somehow, but nothing like, outwardly in that sense. And then again, the allure happened and I shut it down again. Now that I look back, also could be social, wanting to belong and social pressure, because that's when I entered college. And then I got really deep into going asleep, like completely playing with partying and alcohol and all of that whole thing. So really going there. And then one night, that's when I was saying like there were moments where I felt my spirit just plug me back into the path forcefully somehow. And that was a moment where something just completely shattered in my world where
And
I
what
was
stage
walking
of,
at,
oh,
sorry.
okay, this was when you were in college.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. So I was coming out of a party and just going back to my car. And then I got harassed, and it was like, yeah, sexual harassment. And I remember definitely like in that moment, oh, for sure, it was a very traumatic experience, but it was going to get into a rape, but it didn't. But I was definitely fighting it. So there's this part, but then there was something that was miraculous that happened for me. Like that's the best way I can describe it, because that person just literally looked up above me, and literally above me, like not here, not there, above me, and freaked out and just dropped me on the floor. And definitely like I was in fight and flight response, but I remember like what just happened. And I just looked behind me, around me, on top of me, like there was literally nothing. There's nobody, there's nothing. And that's when I just couldn't get it out of my head. I'm like, something happened, something protected me. There's something going on there. And that's when I just went from like not believing, because when I was in that allure and that being in college and just, being in forgetfulness, I shut down. I shut everything down. I was like,
You didn't believe in God anymore?
no, I was kind of in that, actually in that rebellious energy, the rebellious child that just wants to prove things, and just push again that boundary. So then when that happened, it just, of course, humbled me and broke me and everything, to kind of say like, okay, no, there's something out there and there's something protecting me and I need to look into it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that experience. It's very powerful. Now, this was before you had the Kundalini awakening?
Yeah, that was in, I don't know, like it's a long time. I was like maybe 21 or 2021. And yeah, because you were asking me about whether I had awareness of a previous life. It's just
Right.
it was later when I started getting
Okay.
into my spiritual path, and I had a remembrance that this is my of a very clear past life, and this is my second life on earth. So I had a very clear knowing, very clear memory of my first life on earth.
And this happened, you said that happened later after your Kundalini?
No, that was
Oh,
way before.
that was way before.
Yeah.
So could we get into that? Into
Yeah.
how you, like, because it's like past lives. I feel like in the spiritual community, okay, this is like a popular topic now. And while I believe in past lives and I had past life regressions done for me that brought me into states I didn't think I was going to get into, it still feels very unbelievable to the structure that, we're placed in, where it's like, okay, we're given this avatar, this is the one life. What kind of experience did you have? I guess my question is, what kind of experience did you have to gain that kind of clarity of like, no, this is like what happened to me,
Yeah. So moving forward in that moment, because I think that's what I was saying, it was like a sequence of events, and I think it's all
Okay.
like preparation. So in that moment, I definitely started really seeking the path and taking it seriously, basically after that incident. But I started doing my own research through it, so it was kind of this inner exploration. Like I started asking a lot of questions about how things work. Like, why did I attract the situation? What happened? I started seeing patterns repeat in my life. And I was like, wait, there must be something. Like I really started just analyzing those patterns. And then I started doing a lot of meditation, but my meditations became more like deeper, not just places where they just calm me down. They became very like I would just leave my body. I would have out of body experiences in my meditation very, very easily. And get taken even like by myself, just get taken to like even send healing to that harasser that happened to me. Like I would have those very deep journeys that I would go through. And that's when, in a moment, I had in a very strong meditation like that. I think maybe it was the first time I hear Spirit's voice very clearly. You got to shift courses. So I was gonna, continue like my master's in business degree and whatever and do all of that. And then Spirit's like, you got to drop all this and just go to Mexico. You just got to do that. And I had to just like this. The voice was just so strong, and I was like, okay, I just gonna do it.
Did
Like
it
you
shake
can't.
you? Did it shake you up when, so like you're sitting in meditation and then it's just, you're in, I assume like some kind of vision space and then you just hear this voice or this intuition. Yeah. So
Yeah,
did it shake?
it was a clear sound. Like it was the first time that I think I started knowing a bit more about spirit, like how spirit speaks to me. And of course it shook me because also like where, the family, the culture and all of that, like you have to follow, you have to get your master's degree. I got also scholarship and my parents were supporting me pay for it as well. So there was a lot of things that I felt a responsibility towards, but I couldn't deny that voice. It was this, wow, like as if I've waited my entire life to hear that kind of feeling.
Wow.
But the mindset, just the conditioning, everything stop you from finding that true voice inside. And it was like, yay, like I have an excuse, already an excuse, but I had to follow it. And definitely I was not supported maybe from specific family members. Like, of course, like, what the hell you're doing? Are you crazy? And I would say that's when everything changed for me because I plugged into that timeline. And the moment I got into Mexico, literally it was all magic after magic. And I think maybe a lot of people can, relate to that sometimes when you go, you have experience and just things start happening for you because you're meant to be there. And so I was just taken from magical experiences one after the other when I was in Mexico.
When the voice told you go to Mexico, did it tell you any other instructions, or did you already have an idea of, I know this is the place I need to go, or something like this?
No, I didn't know anything. I just knew I needed to be there. And then things just started happening, like very random, like very, very random
Huh.
things. Like I would get invited to that, ceremony, to that experience. And it was just all like a
Wow.
spiritual initiation. And that's when in that space I got, that was another, because you were asked, because I'm going to come full
Yeah,
circle with
yeah.
your question. So, because it's about like trusting, right? It's about building trust with yourself and spirit. And so the first one was, the harassment. And then, second one was when I heard that voice to plug me into that timeline. And then the third one was in a Temascal ceremony, which is actually Temascal is a very, very big part of my path. And I still use it myself.
What is it?
Temascal, which is the shamanic sweat lodge.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, it's part of the medicine that I work with. I call it a medicine because it's a medicine. Yeah, I don't know if I want to go there, but we can go into it a little bit later. But yeah, it's really a ceremony. And that's when I got initiated with it. And it just changed my life in that moment because when I entered, it was a very powerful ceremony. And I experienced things that I never have experienced before. It was like a rebirth, really. And then the shaman that was there just really like recognized me and like spoke into things that nobody ever knew about myself for like 20-ish years. All the things that I had inside myself, growing up as a child, thinking there's something wrong with me, thinking, also told that by church and just having all of those things, like the shaman just peeking into it, it's like this is who you are. And I remember like that moment, there was never going back for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And I
very
think that's when it
powerful.
all started. Yeah.
It's interesting because you were opened up to the spirit world in a way. As you were young, you were opening up portals, and then at 16, like you had the moment where you were able to see spirits, or maybe you shut it down or something like this when you went to college. Like you no longer saw these spirits when you went to college, from my understanding. No more. Was it a long period of time you were seeing spirits, or just like a short period of time you were able to tap into that when you were 16?
Yeah, maybe I can't recall, maybe a year or 2 years, I would say in
Okay.
total, a couple of years.
So that to me, like even like having an experience like that, that's very like, okay, like there's proof that there's something on the other side, right? And so it's interesting to hear that you said that you kind of lost faith in perhaps in God and all of that other stuff, and you just wanted to go into the college world. And did did you not did that do you feel like that experience when you were 16 of opening, did that influence you at all? Or it's just, I'm trying to understand how you processed it.
No, it definitely was abnormal because of conditioning. That's what I'm saying. Like now, for example, if my child tells me he sees things, be like, yeah, amazing. Tell me about it. Let's figure
Right.
it out together. Tell me more. But back then, since I was a child, when I was sharing about it, it was never positively reinforced since a child even. And that's what I'm saying, even like going, from any end, whether it was from my family or from, going into like the spiritual structure, spiritual system that I knew back then, which is the church, because that's what you know. And it was also the same thing. Like, no, this is, even if you see things, it's demonic.
Okay. So
So
you
I
had
was
that label.
I was taken to experience like exorcism, and it was a very weird because of course it didn't take it away because it's not exorcism. But because the thing is, what happens also for me when I start staying into the spirit world, it's not all beings of light. I get to see both, and that's what I was sharing. I was like, I'm seeing this as well and this as well. It's like, yeah, it's a demonic possession and and it was, and I think that the experience itself of having the exorcism happen have had more of a negative effect, I would say, than actually positive. So that's why I would say in my world, there was always this lingering thought, there's something wrong with me.
Okay, so you shared what you were what you were experiencing, and it just you were taken to the exorcism because you were being told that there's like you're being possessed by something, and that's wrong, and you shouldn't be going further into that. So likely
Yeah,
influence you
exactly.
to just not go there
Or
anymore.
or even like I've really danced in all worlds. Like I went there, even at one point went into psychology. And then like, I now that I look at it, like there's nothing wrong with psychotherapy in any way. I think there's specific things that of course are supportive, but there's an extreme of like, especially when you go to psychiatry, where it's just like as if you're a mechanical machine and that's all you are. And then you say like, hey, I'm seeing those things or I'm feeling like this. Oh yeah, it's just a deficiency of serotonin. Like here's a pill. And that was also a very horrible time in my life because it completely numbs you out. Like I felt for me, it kills your soul because you're taking something that just numbing you out. You don't feel anything.
Were you talking about antidepressants?
Yeah, antidepressants. Yeah. And I didn't get into like receiving like any sort of, pills of like hallucinations or things like that. But my friend, my best friend at that time, that was interestingly enough, we're connecting because we were having similar experiences. She really got shut down, with very weird pills and saying that she's going mental. Like it's really sad. It breaks my heart a little bit. So there were all these experiences that shut me down, that just would shut you down.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for going into that. I can understand your perspective. Would we like to get into the Kundalini and what is Kundalini and how you experienced it? Because when I hear about Kundalini, right, I was like researching this when I was back in high school, and it's like, okay, there's a snake at the base of your spine, or Kundalini is associated with some kind of sexual energy, from my understanding, and it climbs up your spine, opens up all your chakras, and then you're just, I don't know, the life force is flowing through you, and that's the basis of what I understood about Kundalini. So could you explain what it actually is and how you experienced it?
Yeah, 100%. So first thing for me is that I more comfortable with the word light body just because of also my experience when I went through it. I was not familiar with Kundalini. And it was later on when I started sharing about my experience working with other people, supporting them, then the Kundalini word itself started plugging into my reality. So that's why I'm a little bit more comfortable with the light body because that's how I broke down my own experience. But basically, like, it's interesting you speak about that because for me, I also spoke about this in my channel that this is like to get out of this kind of limitation of like, some people say, oh, I just felt my spine move a little bit, then my Kundalini activated. And then it kind of shuts down the potency of the process. And I speak about this sometimes with spirituality, sometimes how we abuse or use the words and the processes not with respect. And so that's a big one. Like that was a very big misconception. I'm not saying that some people don't necessarily need to feel it, they can, but it's not necessarily like this, like it starts on the root and go to the crown. It can be, again, that's what I'm saying, the light body. Kundalini, maybe in their philosophy they have a process, I don't know. But as the light body activating for myself, what I realized, it can be anywhere. It's not bounded by the chakras or the systems, energetic systems in our body. And the way that I can really simplify it to make sense of it is that you want to see like, your body, like the frame itself, this everything, your entire structure, the vessel is like a computer system. Okay, so this is like your computer. And then what is inside you, which is cells and the DNA and the cellular structure, everything that creates you, that makes you you, is a software. And so the best way I can describe it is when you have a light body activating is you're literally upgrading your software from what is linear, which is just, I am here, I'm going from A to B, B to C, I'm just, operating as a human, to a complete quantum software. And the quantum software, what I mean by quantum is literally everything, past, present, and future. And that is why it can be very intense if people have a spontaneous one, because it can be this overload of quantum information where all of a sudden they're having past life regressions, they're having visions or experiences of other dimensions, it's just an overload of light information in their body that they don't know how to process or integrate. But literally, if I were to sum it up in the best way I can, and the best visual, this is what it is. You've literally upgraded your software. Everything is different. Everything.
So is this, is light body activation a term that would encapsulate the spiritual ascension process, or is it more so an aspect of downloading this information into your body?
That's the other thing with like ascension. I feel there's a lot of mistranslations with it as well. But my understanding and how I explain ascension is that, because it's also an ascension and a descension actually together. Because ascension is you're just ascending to what? You're ascending to higher states of consciousness. That's why for me, when you're saying we're ascending dimensions, a dimension is a state of awareness for me. It's not something that's linked to something else. It's literally a higher state of awareness. So the light body activating is literally your body becoming consciousness. So it's literally your body upgrading to embody higher states of consciousness. So if I were to, like a mathematician or whatever, say like, okay, this is what this means and this is what it means, then okay, that equates to yes, that's equal.
So would you say within the light body activation, the consciousness is descending down into the body?
Yeah, I would say it's like why the descension is like you're more of like your soul, your spirit is finally able to land in your body.
Okay,
You're able
that
to
makes
embody.
sense.
Yeah.
Do you want to go maybe into your personal experience of the light body activation?
I'd be happy to. It's difficult to like sum it up in few minutes. It's like
Right. You do have a video on your channel, like specific 30-minute full video. So people, if they want extra information, they can definitely go over there. But I know from watching that video, you said that everything opened up for you, right? You see the world in different colors. There was like what you were seeing, like colors, codes, and frequencies with your eyes closed and open too. And so I wanted to know, like, what, it's just, there's a lot here, but for example, with the colors, codes, and frequencies specifically, what do they represent? How do you decode them? Like, if you're opened up to all this information, like your third eye is open, what are you doing with the information? How are you able to decode that?
yeah, I think you touched into several points there. And I want to share that it took me a while to actually share my experience. And I was very selective with who I share it with because it's really like outwardly and mystical. And I'm happy to share it here because your space allows that. Your channel is really a mystical channel and metaphysical. So, but definitely for me, it was a full-blown like pineal gland activation. Like if I were to use that word, like it was literally an opening visually as well. Like it's actually now is that linked because I already have like because when we talk about our sensory reality and like the senses that we have, not everybody needs to be visual. Some people can be auditory or some people can be really feeling, and through the feeling they translate the vision. Other people, really interestingly, they're mappers of reality, like they just speak of maps, they see things in maps. or, you know, analyze things. So every person is very different. So for me, it was fully visual because I have that gift in that way, if I want to put it this way. So it was definitely like a full-blown activation. And as I was sharing, it's like it's an overload of quantum light information all the time, especially because for me it was spontaneous. So it was literally like maybe 3 to 5 months of just like intense overload of information. And I would have it either when I'm, you know, in with my eyes closed, or I could have it experience it with my eyes open. But there are two different experiences that I would have. So when you're talking about, for example, the codes and the frequencies, what would happen is that that's how actually I got after that initiated with the blueprint of the quantum energy work that I do, because I was experiencing it myself. But basically you get hit with what I say is like an energy wave, you know? And that energy wave is usually like what you would get if you're in a very deep transcendental meditation, if you're in a plant medicine ceremony, if you're in an energy session, you kind of are expecting it. Why with the light body is intense? Because it comes unpredictably. So you just have all of a sudden this, you know, like this intense, overwhelming wave or journey that you're experiencing. And it starts with those codes and frequencies that you start seeing. Now, what are those codes and frequencies? What I started understanding as I started breaking it down is that sometimes the codes and frequencies that you see, or the geometries, they can be very powerful, like can be very beautiful. But your body, because in the beginning I was like, okay, so what I see is what I should be feeling, you know? So you're seeing like one thing very common is like the God's blueprint, the Fibonacci, okay? So you see the Fibonacci and you're like, but that's amazing, so I should be feeling bliss. But not necessarily, because what it's actually doing is rewriting some density in it's a very high frequency code. So when it's coming, it's actually, if you're feeling terror or feeling fear or feeling some sort of icky energy, is because that's what it's wanting to work on. So then I understood that what you see and what you feel might not necessarily be translated in that way, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Can I ask, would you say these waves that overcame you, were they similar to like you're in a plant ceremony and then it just starts coming over you, you know? So was it a similar, would you liken it?
Yeah, 100%. Or for other people, they experience it through, you know, being in a very deep meditative state. It could be the same thing. But yeah, definitely. It's that journey. It's like kind of that altered state of awareness, you know, and it's just this rush of light that's coming in your body. And you just get filled with all of that data, all of that information. And then I just gonna say, and vision, like with my eyes open, it was different. The
Okay.
experience, um, I don't know, maybe I spoke into this, but basically with my eyes open, things started looking very, very different. Like everything became frequency and energy. So you could see the energy of the thing that you're looking at. You could see its vibrancy, or you could see its dark energy, if it holds a dark energy. Whether in things like in nature and frames, or it could be with people as well. Like that's why it was a bit overwhelming, because then all of a sudden I could see people's shadows, sometimes if there's specific entities attached to them. So in the beginning it was intense, then had to regulate it. But if, let's say, if it's in a frame, also in the beginning, there could be two experiences either, and that continues. And that's something I speak into as well, you know, with people like right now, that for me, I'm saying is visual, but other people could be feeling it in a dimensional frame. It's a dimension that you're experiencing. So if you're in a clear state and you're grounded, then you're seeing things for what they are. So you could feel literally the energy that that frame is emitting. But if you're going through a clearing, you're going through a phase or an energy, or if you're dealing with a specific dimension within you, so you're feeling sad, you're anxious, then that frame is no longer, you're not seeing it for what it's emitting, you're seeing it for what you're feeling. So then it's actually projecting the dimension that you're in, if that makes sense. But that's the same thing. That's why I say, even with people, like that could be a visual context. But for most of us on this path, we could be experiencing this. That's why if we're having dense energy we're going through, it's important to understand that we could not be maybe seeing things clearly. That's what we say, right? If you're going through a dense emotion, wait for it to pass because you might not be seeing things clearly.
Okay. Interesting. So that's kind of part of your navigation process of that. And recognizing when you are in that clearing stage and you have emotions coming up with, however you experience them, versus when, so you had times where you had that clearing wave, and you had times where you had like a grounded clarity to you already, and you were just able to, I guess, decode from the quantum realm. Is that what you're saying?
Or more like I would say I would then be, when I'm grounded, then I was able to maybe function.
Like in the world function?
Yeah.
In the world function. Okay. Yeah,
because the first few months you're just being upgraded just all the time. It's like
you're going
really
through ceremonies.
Potent constantly. And it's like it's unpredictable, and you're just like constantly going through it, It's funny because we would laugh about it. Like with my husband, I'd be like, okay, it's starting. Like I'm being hit with a wave. Okay, see you later. And it's just like, okay,
Wow. Well, it's great you have like at least your husband is understanding of like, okay, and she's not crazy, let's not put her in like some institution, It's like some people that would be hearing this, they'll be like, oh, that's clearly depersonalization or something like that,
Yeah. And that's why I recommend people when they go through this process is to really be discerning who they're spending their time with and who they're sharing this experience with. Because I also lost my best friend at that time. It's funny because she had hers a few months before mine, and she was in the wrong environment, and she ended up in an institution and she died there. So yeah. So it's very, very important. Like that's super important for integrating and grounding this experience.
Okay, well, I guess this is a good way to get into this question, which is how do you keep your own sanity and stay grounded? I don't know if you had a guide or it was just you, but how do you develop that trust with your own intuition so that, you don't feel like you're going crazy?
And I definitely had those moments the first few days. So what is fascinating about this process and why I'm saying it's linear to quantum is that it's literally everything is upside down. So everything you thought you knew of reality, you're entering a new reality. Like it cannot be, it's not an understate, like literally everything, how you used to operate, how you used to function, how you used to see things, how you used to believe things, everything is deleted because you start experiencing it. So even in terms of like sanity and groundedness, like groundedness, for example, is interesting because this is also a word that's like, it can be like, it has two different colors or shades because sometimes to ground, you want to fly. I don't know if that makes sense. Sometimes we misunderstand grounding as like holding. So like, but I want to be grounded. So I want to, I want to hold on. And this experience is actually teaching that that's not how grounding works. When this, for example, when these waves would happen, what I started understanding, okay, for me to ground, I got to surrender and I got to go and fly, fly, but literally go into that experience. And then I realized after it finished, I started embodying more of who I am and I started experiencing a new grounding that wasn't there.
I guess when you're talking about this different definition of grounding, to me it sounds like you're talking about centering into yourself.
Or like more like grounding to be able to function, because you don't want to be like also like, walking and you're like floating. That's why it's that sense of, because also when we say grounding, it's like feel into the roots and feel yourself like strong in the earth, But I noticed that also a lot, like this is the light body, but this also occurrence happens when we're hit by very strong waves, of like flares, or, what people say, okay, like there's an ascension wave now where that we're all going through. It's very potent energies, and we feel like we're not so grounded because, we're a bit floaty. And in that sense, a lot of people resist it because they're like, but I need to do this, and I got to work, and I got to attend to this, and I got to function. And it's like, no, in that moment, what you want to do is just surrender to it because you're being upgraded, rewritten. You're being rewritten in that sense. So go. Does that make sense?
You mean go surrender to it, or
Yeah.
don't go, like you mean don't go and like expect of yourself to do
Go
all
and
the busy
surrender.
work. Just go and surrender to it and see
Go
what
and
comes up.
surrender.
Okay.
And then the other thing is like, because that's back to the mind. What's causing you to be ungrounded is your mind telling you those stories. Your mind wanting to be something else than where it is. So the mind was a clash. Like my mind's like, I want this to stop. Like, I don't want this. I want to go back to my comfort. And it's like, no, there's no more going back to your comfort. This is happening. So you have a choice either to resist it and you're going to suffer more, or you're going to go. And then there was another contrast of it, which is the mind telling you, the stories of like, this is insane. You're going crazy. You're going nuts. You're losing it. You're losing everything, and that can create an ungrounded feeling because then you're like in anxiety, you're in overwhelm, you're in a panic attack, you're in a panic mode. And that's why in those moments, back to what I was saying, for me, what allowed me to ground into that experience more and more was, as I saying, to trust and surrender, but also be mindful what I'm seeking in that moment. So I stopped, I could not, because whenever I would like want to look for an answer outside of me, like through reading about something, or it was just all fear-based realities, like all fear-based. And then the moment, because everything is amplified, so the moment you read something that triggered a little bit of fear, your fear is like 10,000 times more, and you're like in psychosis in that moment, And I was like, oh, interesting.
I'm just going to ask, when you said that it's fear-based, do you mean that the act of reaching out for that information is fear-based, or the information is fear-based?
It could be both actually, but,
Okay.
but I was saying, because now when you mention it, I'm like, maybe because I was scared, so I wanted a validation of like some sort, like, but then when the main thing was when what I was reading was just very fear-based.
Okay. Okay.
Like again, like what you randomly see, this is psychosis, you're losing it, you need this, you're messed up forever. Like you can really read very weird things online. So that's when I noticed like, oh, interesting. So when I go through that reality, it makes me feel like this. And then when I surrender and I start just speaking spirit language, meaning I trust, this is an activation, this is whatever it is I was decoding, I could feel peace. So for me, that was the bearing of like, that's my grounding. So I'm going to stop seeking information from that end and believing those fear-based realities and narratives and actually trust what I'm going through.
So this gets into the question of recognizing when you need or external guidance would be helpful for you versus this is a time for you to be alone in your process. I was watching one of your videos, and one of the quotes you said was, I could not get anything from the outside and everything needed to be internally generated. I wanted to ask, why did you feel like this, and how were you able to, I guess, discern that, which you just kind of went into?
Yeah. I mean, I always say that for me, if I had a guide that went through what I went through, it would have been priceless for me because it would have made my life and my process much easier. But why that thing happened to me, and I think many could experience this, is that it's a space of like complete unknown. Everything that you thought you knew, everything that you felt is not the same. Like even that's why you could say like, okay, this identification. That's why I'm saying like I appreciate like psychology and the mental health, but there's a ceiling. It has to be both spirituality and mental health because they stop it there. It's like, oh, you're just dissociated or you're whatever, you're disidentifying. But actually, you're disidentifying because a new identity wants to come through. Can we see it this way? So for me, that was the process where even looking at myself in the mirror, I couldn't recognize myself. Looking at the people around me, things did not feel the same. It's not that extreme of like, oh, my husband, who are you? Like, it wasn't like this. It was more of, an energetic thing where how he made me feel, he was no longer able to make me feel that, which is, safety, for example, like as a woman, just being with him, I would feel safe, like he's my man. And I stopped feeling that. And I freaked out like, oh my God, you're like my comfort zone. Like I would just sit with you and I feel I could breathe. Now I had to give that to myself. Same with food. If we go to comfort food, then if you're going with that energy, it would create more chaos and turmoil because you see, you're reaching it because you want comfort. Now you're going to find it within you. That's what I was talking about. And that's why I needed to rely on myself. Now, the thing is that in terms of like asking for guidance, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. On the contrary, if I had it, but as I was saying, it wasn't part of my reality. Like, it's not like I knew about it or I heard about it, like, oh, it's a Kundalini or light body, and let me research somebody that can support me. I wasn't aware of that. But if somebody is, I definitely recommend reach out for a guide because they can make it much more graceful for you because they've gone through it and they have the blueprint. So they can just tell you, oh, that's what's happening with you. Okay, da-da-da-da-da. They can translate it for you. And then there can be some, the pieces of the puzzle are bridged.
Right. And you do this as well. So if people resonate with you, then they can go over to your website. So you had this spontaneous Kundalini, but some people have maybe a more gradual, right? Or, light body, if that's a word you prefer. Why do you think this happens differently for people? Spontaneous versus gradual?
Yeah, I think that's very important to highlight also because some people are like, but my light body did not activate like when they hear those stories. It did. It does. It could. It is, like it doesn't have to be that overwhelming experience that you've had, but you could be having it in different times, like literally like small codes coming in together. And then if you look back, maybe by looking back into your life and saying, oh wow, like a year ago, that's where I was. I didn't have that embodiment. I didn't have that awareness. That's it. That's the process. That is what I am. I don't even know why I'm sharing this, but that is what I don't like about the spiritual community sometimes of like putting those labels like, oh, like, not everybody is ascendant and you should do this to ascend and you should do this to like, that's not how it works. This is really not how it works. So why some people have it and others don't? I really feel it's a personal inquiry. It depends on every single person. Like to generalize it, I feel it's a bit too much because every single person has their own reasons and their own timings. For myself, it was definitely an acceleration. Like I even laugh about it with my own spirit. Like it's just felt like you're taking too long. Like you're just taking too long. Like we gotta do it, And then I understood for myself because I needed to be then in service and start sharing and start doing what I needed to do. Like if not, maybe I would have taken longer to step up or do what I don't know. But that's what I'm saying. It's a really personal inquiry.
So it's something about divine timing and also, I guess, your soul plan.
Yeah, and also there's definitely like your intention. I feel this is very important also. Like it's both, but also it's really that internal unconscious intention, not the intention that is sometimes tied to what you believe you want, but really that deep inner heart's intention that, like for me, it was always like, I'm devoted to God. Like so even before that, I was always like, okay, what can I'm here and always making decisions for God, but I didn't. So that's why it was that unconscious intention I had. So it's then met, like, okay, you're ready. Okay, let's do it.
Can one cause a Kundalini activation? Right, because you just spoke about the intention. So like the light body activation, this is an increasing of one's awareness, correct?
Yeah.
So this also goes into the question of, I know in one of your videos you distinguish between like a mental awakening and the light body awakening.
Yeah.
Can you go a little bit more into that? And can we intend both of these to happen?
Like the mental awakening and the
Sure, like both, or are they different?
yeah. So the best way I can describe it is where I make the differentiation is between being spiritual and being conscious. For me, they're two different things, although sometimes we notice in the path and in the communities they're overlapping. But I'm going to give an example. How many people that you know, yourself or the audience that is hearing, that is spiritual? Maybe it could be a family member or someone very far away, but they're spiritual in the sense where they do yoga, meditation, they know maybe about the system, and that's it. They're not doing the inner work. They don't want to take responsibility for their actions. They're not willing to change. It's more of like, I don't want to say necessarily a trend. It could be some people have gone through it because it's a trend, but it could be that they have a different reason. Maybe it's for mental relaxation. They do those spiritual activities, just maybe it supports their lifestyle, but they're not doing the consciousness work, which is the reprogramming of your patterns, the real work where you're starting to notice. And that is why in the sentence I have my chance where body meets consciousness, because it's really where every single thing you start noticing is energy and has awareness. So even when I'm moving my hand, why am I moving my hand like this? Why did I say that word in that moment? Why am I speaking? Everything becomes, a full awareness. And then consciousness starts rippling out in all areas of your life. You can't be just conscious in one area or the other. Of course, you can have unaware in specific areas because there's a bigger shadow and it needs a bit more work. But there is a full devotion to growth. There's a devotion to evolving as a human being. And that's a distinction I make. Now, why is it? That's what I mean by mind awakening and body awakening. Mind awakening is only when you got knowledge. You listen to specific documentaries, or you practice a little bit, and then you spread the words, but it's only in the mind. It's not integrated. You're not walking the talk. And I'm sure that somebody, a person listening might know somebody that is like that, maybe not necessarily in spirituality, but in their life, where it's just knowledge, but it's not integrated. It's not that wisdom that's lived. And I think that's the main difference that needs to happen here, to know the difference between both.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And so through devotion to this path of consciousness, this is how we can have the light body activate. Is this what you mean?
Yeah, like it's really about just doing the work of consciousness, like being conscious. It's not just about doing your practices, your modalities of meditating and this. There has to be an extension of that, an implementation, of awareness that comes in relationship. It comes really in those inquiries, in those developments, in the struggles and the challenges, whether it's through a relationship or maybe a struggle in your career or how you're showing up in your life, or maybe really doing that deep dive inquiry. Why did I say that thing that I did? What is it that in that relationship, what is it that I'm doing? How can I take responsibility? How can I own my own energy? And most of the times, that's why even within the spiritual frame, very few are really doing that work of owning their energy, owning it. And it's very easy to just, because that's what's also fascinating, is that the ego is part of us. Okay, we're part of it. And as we grow, it grows. It doesn't grow with us like we have bigger ego, but it learns. So then it's interesting because then it starts using spiritual words as well and spiritual terminologies, So then instead of actually owning our energy, we're like, oh no, this is just your projection, or this is just your stuff. And you're like, or you're just bad energy. It's like, oh. So that's the thing, it's escapism. And then we say like, okay, I'm just being spiritual, but it's not. It's really differentiating. This is about the real inner work, embodying more of who we are.
Because then when we start doing that, we start putting each other on levels of like, oh, I've done these practices, I know these terminologies, I've studied this, I know this, and this is what you're doing, you know? This is what, when you're in a relationship with somebody, this is what you're doing. You're telling them about what they're doing and how you know more. You know, it's very interesting. Would you consider this to be a large, like, collective shadow, or what would you consider to be one of the most prominent collective shadows within the spiritual realm, or just in general?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think in general, like I would also, I did a video about that I broke down like kind of the shadow of 3D, 4D, 5D, and broke down also what each is. But because we think sometimes, oh, we're in 5D, then there is, you know, no shadow. But not really. That's the thing. It's like there's constant inner work to happen. And one of the shadows of, like, I would say there's two main ones. One of them is, you know, what we're talking about, which is a form of like spiritual bypassing. And it's kind of also that I would say is like, it ties into the second one, which is a bit of like that condescending energy that comes in with the spiritual ego, where it's like, you know, we are the ascended ones, we are the chosen ones, everybody else is not. It's like everybody else is stupid, you know. And maybe I'm doing it a little bit extreme, but literally that's how it is. That's the archetype. Even when they speak, you feel that separation. It's like, no, like that's not how it works. It's not like you're the chosen one and you're the ascended, and you can feel that ego aspect behind it that's being heightened. And most of the times it's because they're not willing to really do that trauma work and that shadow work to be able to integrate. Because at the end of the day, it actually opens you up more to be able to understand people where they're at. Eventually, that's what it is. The more that you open your heart and you do more of your own shit, you know, your own stuff, and you realize that we all have stuff, and you realize how much it actually takes you to deal with a specific shadow you have and bring love to that area, then you would understand why other people are the same. There wouldn't be the separation. So we see that also a lot, like, you know, that spiritual ego that's just being, because what they're doing is they're utilizing power. They're wanting power and whatever it is that their reason to fuel that aspect of themselves, because there's maybe a hole that they're not willing to, you know, fill for themselves. So that's one aspect of it. And definitely another aspect is, yeah, to just, you know, walk the talk, really like do that integration. And I think that one I was somehow in a little bit of it when I was a lot of like light work, you know, la la land, you know, it's like everything is light, everything's energy, everything's amazing. And then, and then even speaking from that space to the entire world, like, oh, you know, like it doesn't need that much. Like you can just, you know, just be the light, just see the beauty everywhere. And you're like, wow, the moment that you're in a dense reality, in a dense collective, you realize that's not applicable. So that's where the bridge comes in, you know, where the moment that you land and you start, and I wasn't landed in my body. I was very much in the upper areas of my field. Sorry, because there's a lot of trauma in the bottom. So I really needed to do a lot of that work to integrate.
Yeah, so I think when we're opened, you know, maybe it's mentally, maybe we had some psychedelic experience and we're like, wow, it's all love. You know, you're like, love, love, love. Which I personally have interesting relationship with the concept of love, right? Because of my own aspects within myself. But for me personally, when I found myself doing things like telling people, like, you know, what you just described, that shadow, for me, it came from like a protective energy for myself. Because I'm like, okay, I need to protect myself. So I can't be interacting with those people. You know, I would kind of like label it as like, I don't want my energy going over there. But then, like, yeah, there's validity to that. But as well, it's like, take ownership of your own energy and where you place yourself. Not that that person or that group of people are bad or lower than you, right? It's like, it's not in alignment with your own energy. And so it's an interesting way for the ego to navigate these concepts, because I'm still definitely navigating all this. And this is just my reflection towards what you said.
Yeah, and I think that's valid, because I think it's really a like what I hear is a different energy between discerning what is good for us and an energy of entitled, like it's more of an entitled energy that I'm talking about. It's more of like, you know, I am the chosen one. You know, we are the choice. It's like, and because I am that, then the world needs to, you know, it's to do what I say, you know, like it's kind of, it's that energy. It's not so much of like being discerning of like, okay, these people are, you know, in unawareness and that is affecting me right now. So I got to take some space because they're in unawareness. That's fine, because I don't think that this is also another misunderstanding of compassion. It doesn't mean because you understand somebody where they're at that you need to like have them in your space.
And give them all
You
your
know,
energy
yeah,
and listen for hours and
but
hours. Yeah.
it's a little bit of a nuance, you know. It's not, it's a discernment is different than really something that is just feeding off your ego, you know,
Right.
feeding your ego.
And it's being able to discern when you're coming at it from and at yourself from a heart-centered space. Are you seeing from the heart center or from the ego? Yeah, at least for me, that's where I'm trying to discern, doing my best with that. I wanted to ask, in terms of your own navigation of your process of your activation, can you describe in which way you receive guidance from your higher self? How does it appear for you? Or how do you decode the guidance and have clarity with it? Because one thing I noticed, right, from your videos, like I've told you before, is you appear with a lot of clarity in your understanding of these somewhat elusive concepts, right? Like the higher self, like how do I know this? Okay, I see so many synchronicities, but what does it mean? How do I decode this? How do I get clear guidance? I want to see your process with that.
Okay, I definitely would say that it's not something that is expected to happen overnight in a click of a finger, because we are so conditioned, we are so used to operating in a linear frame. That's what I'm saying. Like, imagine educating your child into the mystical world, educating it, you know, that it's used to those phenomena, that it's used to hearing things, seeing things, you know. But there's a lot of work for us to do. So I feel that it's literally stages, but also it's the best thing that I can say is really to follow, like trust, just follow through and trust. And every single person, that's another thing that's very important. Many of us want to compare and like say, but this person is receiving this in that way, so I should be receiving it this way. No, the way that your spirit talks to you or communicates with you is very, very different. Very, very different. It's a personal relationship that you have with it. You can call it, you know, intuition, you can call it higher awareness, you can call it whatever it is. Like for me, I stopped using, for example, higher self. For me now, it's like either a higher awareness that I have, which eventually you become one with it because you're devoted into that path, or it could be a spirit. You know, I call another word spirit, that is giving me the guidance if I'm in wanting to be in prayer mode. But it's really bringing that intimacy, and again back to the intention. If you put the intention of like, I want to get to know my spirit, I want to get to know whatever word you use, how it talks to me, how it communicates with me, then it's going to reveal. But maybe what's coming to me is not in the way that you think it's going to happen. It could be in a completely different way. And so many times it's really an understatement, but we stop ourselves. We either because we don't want to believe, again, back to the conditioning, or like a big one for me, for example, was when the light body activating, is that everything even I knew of spirituality or my connection with spirit changed. So I remember telling my husband, like in that moment, I'm like, but that's not how I recognize my soul. Like that cannot be, like I was like, yes. And I remember he's saying, he's like, then you didn't know your soul. Like he's like, it was a very strong. I was like, what do you mean? It's like, yeah, then you didn't know, because that is how your soul, that powerful your soul is, which every soul is very powerful. And so the way they communicate to us might not be in the way that we want it. Some of us want to, you know, just connect and see maybe this fluffy, you know, butterfly, you know, guardian angel, whatever it is coming to us. And then you might be surprised that it might come in as a very different energy. You know, I don't know. Like I'm just saying that, I'm just giving a visual, you know, that it might show up as something that might frighten you. I don't know. I'm not going into visuals of like something, I'm not saying dark. I'm just saying it's what you're not expecting. It could be, it might come in a way that where you're not expecting.
Right. Right. I believe the life journey is of the soul revealing itself, right? As we surrender more.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. That's it.
Yeah. It's a whole journey. We're here for it. I wanted to ask about quantum energy technology and the quantum energy field. And I know you have a lot on your channel, so I just want to briefly ask a question about it.
Yeah.
So you say that you received this quantum technology blueprint. So this is like big words together. What does it mean? I want to know, what is this and how did you receive it? Was it through these codes? Like, I'm just trying to understand what this is.
Oh gosh, I love your questions. Like really, it's like even, helping like ground even more those big concepts, really get them tangible,
I'm
which is
glad.
amazing. Right. And your channel, right? Translating what it is. Back to that. Let's translate. Let's bring them into words.
Yes, let's do it.
Oh gosh. Okay. So yeah, so that goes into two different aspects. But basically, the quantum energy technology, I received it. Also, I would say it was several pieces of activations that I had throughout my journey. Definitely being on the shamanic path, holding ceremonies, doing maybe also sometimes I would say like receiving energy also from other, like I would say it was literally keys that I kind of brought together, and they were stuck with me, they were imprinted in me. But then the biggest one, as I was sharing, was through my light body, because what I was going through was the technology itself. So then as I was going through it, eventually it mapped out. It was like, wow, that's what I was going through. So I was given through my own experience, as if like I was initiated, like go through those, upgrades and this experience first, and then I brought down the download, and then I started implementing it after, of course, my own light body activation regulated. Like I couldn't do it in the midst or during. I started practicing later. But so that was into 2018, I would say 2019, 2018, 2019. But basically what it is that I really find it super powerful, because if I would sum it up in one word, it works on the source program, the root cause of everything that is inside you. So you come in, let's say, and you have a specific issue or something you're struggling with. And I usually recommend to come with something really deep, not like I want to, I don't know, open my throat chakra. Like really work on something that is you're feeling there's a shadow or a blind spot or a struggle there. And then you come in, and what we do, I open up the portal of the quantum field, and we place that intention in the center so that it manifests during the session. So then what happens is that there's the holographic field, right? So we're inside it. I'm able to actually navigate it to actually take us to the root cause, or what I call the source program, the root cause of that issue that you came in with on an energy level in the quantum field. And most of the time, what we realize is that it's really coming from somewhere else. Like you think, let's say you're having an issue with a friend, and you might realize that actually it came from your childhood, or maybe even it came from another lifetime, or it could be even an ancestral curse that you're carrying. And since then, it's been playing out. And what is even fascinating is that you notice that it's not only affecting that issue, it affects several areas of your life. So that is why actually I call it first and foremost like a reprogramming technology, because we go to the root cause and we decode that shadow. And because it's a shadow, it's not like in 5 minutes we're there. And I'm going to speak into that why it's not there. But actually you go and you reprogram that shadow on the DNA level, an energetic level. Okay, you recode it. But between the moment that we put that intention and we're going to the root, it's a shadow. What does the shadow want to do? It doesn't want to be revealed. And then between it, it's a whole what I call a quantum journey, because you can experience so many things. We can go through, releasing of entities if an entity is attached to that wound, to that trauma, or to that pocket that you have, that source program. It could be maybe physical or emotional releases. It could be, unfreezing trauma and bringing back those fragmented pieces within yourself. Inner child, like it could literally be, these are just few ideas, but it's really personal to you as well, to what you're experiencing. And what happens is that then it also brings an activation of something that is within you that you needed, like a specific code that you needed to unlock. it activates that for you. So for example, like a person can be, all of a sudden we're unlocking like mystical or metaphysical memories that they've had, maybe of other lives or of their light, so specific light aspects of themselves. Why did they need to experience that? Because they've been in disempowerment, right? They forgot their light. They didn't know what it is. So they needed that activation to be able to remember who they are and bring power. But someone else could be, just doing, inner child healing because they released a pattern that they had with their mother. So that's why every single experience is very different, because we're all different and we all have different intentions. But I think I just want to say one more thing, why I feel like, first of all, I found it very powerful because of that, because it's going to the source program, which many of us, sometimes we don't. When we do a specific healing, it's just one layer. But when you go to the source program, you're unplugging, that root where it all started. And then you can flourish in different area. But why I love it also is because it allows you, it's an embodiment technology, because it gives you the power. What I'm only doing, I'm not doing anything. What I'm doing is only guiding you. I'm only just guiding you. Let's go there. Let's do this. Oh, here it is, shining light on the blind spot. But at the end of the day, you're the one that need to reinforce that change that you've had. So what I love about it is that throughout the process, we get different like downloads or like higher information of how this source program, this shadow, is actually revealing itself in your day-to-day. So it's not only about the issue that you first came through. You notice that actually you start thinking that, or in that moment when you want to show up in that way, that shadow start doing this. So then boom, you brought the unconscious to the conscious. And then because of that, you got power. And then you can implement it in your day-to-day. It's very, very integrated. So yeah, that's what I love about it as well.
So that's a very cool. Now, how do you get into the seeing the quantum realm? So you said when you had that activation, the light body, initially you were just wide open gate, right? Are you able to now kind of just open and close it? Like now you're not seeing all that, but you can, I guess, with the intention, have that experience come in again, or the experience of the quantum realm.
Like you mean like the energy waves that I was talking about when you get hit by a wave?
I mean, your access to the quantum energy field. Does it also show up for you like in codes and frequencies, or is this like a shamanic journey, or both?
I see them as the same, really.
Okay.
I see them as the same because the shamanic pathway is also alchemizing, moving energies, and sometimes there could be recoding. It depends on every person. But for me, they're not separate. Actually, for me, I call it the shamanic way for sure.
So I've had like from Native American tradition, I've had a soul retrieval done for me, where a lady was she was beating her drum. She got herself into a trance, and then she had her guides. They show up for her in animal forms because she was part of that Native American tradition, and she would see me. She would see my guides in that kind of like animal representation, and then she would have a whole, it was like within that tradition. It's a little different how they go about it, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is when you open yourself up, right? When you do a session of a person, what do you see? And I know this is probably really abstract, right? but but like with that lady, she's having those animal guides show up, and she's having a whole story laid out in front of her where she's taken with these animal guides show her things are going on. For you, how do you see it?
Oh God, I think I need you because you're the painter.
to paint it out.
Yeah, because you have that gift for sure. It's actually quite fascinating because what happened for me is that I decided that I'm going, as I'm actually giving the session, I'm going to speak about every single thing that I see. Because sometimes when you do, energy work or modalities, sometimes you just don't say anything. And for me, I was like, actually, that's an activation itself. So I literally share every single thing that I see. And it's fascinating because sometimes right after it closes the portal, so you feel like you're in another realm. You're like, what just happened? What were we talking about? Because you're just accessing that space, you know? So it's definitely, but that's why I'm saying it's very different, because some people, I've had the drum at some experiences. Sometimes I do sound frequencies. Sometimes it's very different depending on what the person needs. That's what I realized. Sometimes a specific person needed that shamanic initiation because there was, or what we call, for me, shamanic is all that we do is shamanic. That's what I would see. But what I'm saying is that energy you're describing, that's because they needed that. They needed also empowerment. So there was a little bit of that drum. There was like a bit also of the fire element that they need in that moment. But every single person experienced something else. Another person just needed more of, light codes and light tunes and light frequencies coming in because that's what they were activating. So it's really, really different. It's quite fascinating.
So that's
I
how
really
just
work with the essence of the person. And that's what I love about it, is because it brings so many different codes because we're all very different. Sometimes some people are very, very big, like not physically, but like in nature, So then like to hold them and to create that space, it's like it brings out a very strong code, and strong session. Some other people need more gentleness and softness. It's beautiful.
so by use various modalities of transmitting or these codes like sound healing or other like ways. I don't know what else, but but I know sound healing, so that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, I would say that's the thing. If I were to use words, it's like I do, I could do sound healing. So there could be some sound frequencies that I use in there. I don't always use the drum sometimes, because also when it's virtual, it's not like I've done maybe drums in more personal settings, but I could do the drum as well. But it's more than anything, it's really like for me, the basis of that session, or the core of it is really the higher intelligence that comes through. I feel that is the most important thing. The other thing, especially for me, for example, the frequency that I use is to break down walls sometimes. Like I feel like there's barriers, or like if someone's not resisting to really go into the trauma. So sometimes I use the frequency just to break down that resistance, so that we can just access it. So kind of soften the space, or sometimes to bring out a specific code or activate, like we are saying, empowerment. So I bring some frequency, but most of the time it's like holographic surgery as well. So when you're releasing entities, or you're doing some recoding on a DNA level, it's like a surgery. It's like a holographic surgery. But then again, as I say, for me, those things are just a tool. I feel the main thing for me is that higher intelligence that the person comes out with, that then they can take it and implement it in their day-to-day.
Right, right. And you touched on the entities, and I definitely want to talk about the entities. Okay. Can we go into what are entity attachments? What is their purpose? And do we all have them?
Woohoo, big questions. You're good at that. Big questions. It's really, I love this because this is really multifaceted and multi-perspective. Because the thing is that you can see it from a perspective of like a fear-based perspective, or from that duality perspective, where just like, entities are that dark thing, and then we can see from a different perspective also of like, okay, when I'm releasing that entity, or that entity attached to me, where is it attached and what can I do about it? So basically, like, entities are things, they can literally take any sort of form. Like I've seen, they can be, an animal form, like insects, reptiles, whatever it is. They can be even octopuses, like it's pretty fascinating, or
I've
spiders.
heard of the octopuses.
They're really common.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're
Interesting.
really common, and yeah, they're usually in collective, like it's more of a collective entity or a collective shadow. And then there's, they can be like an alien entity or maybe beings, entities. But also a really recent one that I've seen. Well, not really recent. I saw it like a year ago, but it was an AI entity. So that's also been, I think it's being infiltrated into our collective right now. But they can literally take any sort of form that yeah, it's just different shapes and forms. But basically what they're there for really, because also speak about this, but basically we have many people also on the path, that's another thing with the spiritual shadow, is that we tend to bypass that. We want to bypass it, maybe because it's a bit of those dark realities that of this world and of this realm we're in, and maybe we don't necessarily want to get into it. And also it could be because many of us entered into it and created a lot of fear, so people are avoidant of it. And I think the purpose of when I speak into that is just to bring awareness of the reality. Because if something is happening, let's say like child trafficking or whatever, okay, like, oh no, I don't want to look because but we actually need to look to integrate it, but not in a way where we're constantly talking about it and oh my God, and with this drama energy and this fear energy. So it's all about the energy, right? But basically, where this realm is really a prison grid, what I call the prison grid, the false matrix. And that grid is actually a copy of the original grid, which is a divine blueprint. And that prison grid is really managed by the controllers. And the controllers are dark forces. They're the ones that say, you do this, you do that. And why it's very apparent, because if you think about it, like, why is it that our food is poison? Why is it that our systems are not supporting us? These are the questions that we have to start asking. It's not because, okay, like this is a duality, but really this realm, the way that it's been designed, is not supportive of us connecting to our divinity. Is not. That's the reality. But there is a divine blueprint. I think that's where other people that have not seen God and have not experienced divine love, they don't know, and they want to just focus on the prison grid. But actually it's both. There's also a divine blueprint that we want to connect into. But what happens is that the entities, because we're in that world, we're part of their world. So there are those entities that are present with us. And do we all have them? Yes, I feel. And what I've seen is that we do all have them. Some of them are from the womb. Some of them we carry them from somewhere else before we come. Others come, especially when we're in childhood, when there's a very strong trauma. They really come in different times. And their purpose is really to feed off of your light, to stop you from connecting to the divine grid, divine blueprint. But then again, when I do the work with people, because I also get people that, telling them that they can, especially with their conditionings, it can freak them out sometimes. Like, what do you mean I have an entity? It's like, well, there was a purpose, there was an agreement that happened there, on whatever level. So let's see why it was there and why it was attached. So when we're releasing the entity, it allows us to see where it was sitting. And what I call the pocket, which is a hole in your field, this is where they get attached to. So let's see, what was that shadow? So we can see that perspective is that it's allowing us to see a little bit more of where that all started. So do a little bit of that dive, into shadow work. So it's really a matter of perspective, but I feel it's really bringing a realistic perspective at the end of the day.
And
yeah, I don't know if I answered all your questions. Sorry.
Yeah, don't worry, I have more. How do these entities, so we kind of went into this, that they can have many different appearances, right? But how did they appear to you? Like, how do you understand how to release them and others of these entities? Like, okay, I don't know. I guess, yeah, let's just go to this question. How do you understand how to release yourself and others of these entities? Like, okay, maybe you see something's attached, you feel an energy, however you're able to sense into it. And now what?
Yeah. Now what? What do you mean? Like
now what? Like now how do we, like before you release, like first you sense it, it appears to you. And then how do you go about releasing it from yourself, from other people? Like, what is your process with that, with dealing with them?
Yeah, so how did I come about it? I would say that when I started doing some regression into my childhood, I definitely met and saw entities when I was a child, but I didn't have that memory until I recollected that memory later. And then when I said, like, when I was a teenager and I was seeing into the spirit world, so I was seeing definitely shadows and entities. So and then I think starting the shamanic path, And when I started also holding ceremonies, so like a lot also in the Temascal ceremonies, a lot gets revealed as well, because we do that kind of work in the Temascal, what I was saying, the shamanic sweat lodge. But basically, what I remember a very important time where I would see them, like I started seeing them, in specific, like I remember a reptile getting, seeing a reptile in a friend at a specific moment. It started getting activated like that. But definitely what I started understanding is that you start seeing them in the fourth dimension. They operate like the person, I'm just going to give an example. The person that is in the third dimension, if they're religious, they have some sort of access to the spirit world and from their belief. So they could be seeing, right, some of those creatures or entities. But for most people, if they're not, and they wake up to the world that there's a system and there's something going on, then in the fourth dimension, that's where you have access to, you start seeing them, because they're the ones that they don't want us to awaken. So when you first open the spirit realm or you access it, you're going to see those really the parasites, like I call them the parasitic entities, because they're the one that are operating in that realm. And I don't know why I'm saying this, but this is why I feel like devotion to consciousness is very important, because there's a lot of distortions in the spiritual path. Like there's distortions in many different area of our life. We know in religion and as being a doctor, like it's all about integrity. But even in shamanism, there's a lot of shamans that operate within that ceiling, what I call the ceiling, which is they're only operating from that fourth, they're not working with divine light energy. So they have that superpower, but what's happening is they're just basically given that power through those entities, because they're only accessing that realm. I don't know if I answered your question. Actually, I went into a tangent, but so how would you do that? I would say it's the main killer. I feel like really going back to that, translation is very important. The moment that you start translating and understanding, I'm going to speak into two different dimensions here, but translating and understanding this world, this realm, how it operates. So that's why maybe talking about these things, being mind that, okay, this is what happens, this is what operates. Then it gives you some sort of power. It gives you some sort of tool to learn how to navigate it. But if you're in unawareness, you might get freaked out, which most of us do. Because we're not used to it. And I think many of us, maybe in the beginning, if you see something or you've experienced something that's dark, you freak out. So that freak out is only giving it more power, in that sense. But I'm not saying it in a way that scares you. It's not like it's giving more, but you're not really standing in your light in that sense. What you want to see it as, I swear, literally, this is really a recommendation, but it's from what I've seen, is that they're not as big as they make themselves look.
Yeah, and they play off just that you're going to be feeding them the fear and the ability to be big in your reality.
Yeah. So really, if you detach and see them as they're not as big as whatever, energetically or physically, sometimes they can show like they're, overwhelming you, and then actually like, no, like reveal yourself or show, and then it's like they don't have a hold of you, but they want to make you think that they don't. The moment that you stand in the light of awareness, for me, that's all it is. When you're aware, because they don't want you to be aware. When you're standing in the light of awareness and in that translation, in that knowing that this is an entity, this is how the world operates, and then you claim that you don't want this reality anymore. Now, where it gets a bit more challenging is when it's attached with a very strong emotion. That's when it gets difficult maybe for you to completely release yourself from it, because it's distorting you as well, especially if it's a very ancient one. So I just asking spirit, claiming like you're ready, and it really takes all that warrior energy, that warrior archetype, that inner light within you to say, I don't want this. Like I'm done. I'm claiming back my space. I'm claiming back my light.
Right.
Yeah.
And actually, when you were talking about this, another thing came up for me. It's kind of unrelated, but it's about okay, so we can fine-tune a kind of system for ourselves of translating this consciousness so that we can have awareness of the mechanics and be able to navigate this world. And it's interesting because then there's the concept of the more you know, the less you know. And it's like, from how I'm interpreting you, is like you've gathered the information on how to navigate this, but yet, you know, this universe is constantly expanding, so we're always and I'm bringing this up because it's like, for me, I want to understand how it all works, you know, but it's like, is there a person that can understand how it all works, you know what I mean? Or how are you, I'm just trying to get your perspective on this.
Let me see if I'm understanding correctly. Like, I feel no one can really know everything.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm trying to
I know it-
understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that anybody that claims that they know everything, I think that's the very first level of like, okay, let's look into the spiritual ego there. We don't. And even it's all different perspectives. We have access to, each one of us has their own gifts and their own truth, their own perspective of the truth. And that's why I feel it's very special when many of us can come together. And when we're coming in together, it's like an alchemy of seeing then the bigger picture. But not everybody knows everything 100%. Because that's what I say, even in terms of healing, to say that you have ascended, it's a space that you need to reach, is a trap in itself. It's a journey. It's not a place that you just say, okay, you know, I have ascended, I have become an ascended master. No, it's not how it works. At least in my world, that's not how it works. In my, like, I feel it's a refinement. It's a constant refinement, evolution, and there's just constantly so much change. And I think this journey is actually becoming master in navigating change and in adapting, because the level of change that we're going through is insane. Like, even, I don't know about you, but maybe if you look back into your own channel and just maybe if you left a video a year ago and you look at yourself like, whoa, I don't even recognize myself, you know, like we're really upgrading all the time. So this journey is actually a deep dive into the unknown. And the best we can do is just to keep refining ourselves and keep wanting to grow, wanting to learn new things. You know, even with my energy work, for example, I've changed it so much. Like, I've refined it so much. In the beginning, it was just focus on this and then this. And I realized actually we don't need this anymore. And I think that's what I feel many of us on this path, even the ones that we put ourselves out there, you know, a lot of like even spiritual teachers, if you hold on to your identity and to what you know, they're scared to question it, because if they question one thing, it opens up to, I feel actually this is it. This is what we need to do, to keep questioning. Not in a way where it's stopping us from going to something, because then the mind can take a hold and we can start overthinking things. But we are in a time where things that used to work are no longer going to work anymore. And that's it. It's all changed. So we got to be open for it. I don't know if that was your question, but that's what came through.
Yeah, beautiful. So it's like I asked that because there's some people that would look at, for example, you, and they'll be like, oh, like she thinks she knows it all. And not that, you know, that's how it is, but it's like, I feel like there's that impression of, at least, you know, for me, it's like, I have a thing with labels. Something in my psyche is like resistant to them, and resistant to even embodying myself as, you know, somebody that can teach. Because then I'm like, but what do I have to offer? You know, so I'm seeing how, you know, this reflection goes with you. So that's why I asked that question. But so yeah, beautiful. What I got from what you said is that, you know, we're navigators of, you know, this pathway, of our also individual souls pathways, where we can master our own way, and then we can share from that self-mastery, self-refinement to guide others. And 100%. I think ultimately that's, you know, that's what we're all here doing. And it's, yeah, that's great. 100%. I wanted to get that out, you know, so people understand where it's coming from.
Yeah, and I relate to this, what you said, because it was what actually stopped me from coming out. It was that fear of labels. Even like coming and writing a bio, like that's the most difficult thing. I don't know about you, but for me, it's like, I don't want labels. I don't want to be known as anything. And it stopped me for so long. And I even shared a video about that, of the fears that were stopping me from coming out. And of course, one of them is fear of criticism and, you know, of being, you know, killed. Like, it goes so deep, you know. But one of them is fear of labels, and I still have it. You know, when you introduce yourself, who are you? And then I realized like I had to get out over myself, because we need labels in this world. But it's my journey, my duty to myself, to make sure that I am not identifying myself in it in a way that's limiting me, but instead it's empowering me, and to claim it. Like, why in the store say, okay, you're a painter. You are a painter. You really are a painter. You're a very, like, if I were to introduce you right now, or introduce a painter because you're a painter, but let's say if you're you're a YouTuber, let's say, okay, you're a YouTuber and you're an artist. I'm just saying, like, normal 3D people, that's what they would say. We need labels to identify. I'm a doctor, I'm this, So then I was like, okay, what is it I do? This is what I do because it's a gift of mine. And if I'm going to keep blocking myself from it, then I'm not going to let myself get out of it. And of course, there's going to be constantly, people thinking things and projecting things. And but it's always the duty of integrity and checking in. And I always say that as well. I do not claim to know anything at all. If anyone does, this is a red flag right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing all of that. And then I guess this kind of goes to one of my last questions, which was about, running a conscious business is how do you balance the disidentifying with your ego and also marketing yourself, with the labels for the world, but also not attaching yourself with the ego attaching to, I am this,
Oh gosh, yeah, I know. And and that's been like my relationship with marketing has been a love and hate. I would say more of a hate relationship. And the reason for that is because I was living in Peru for 7 years. And where I was living, for those of you that know the Sacred Valley, it's literally unplugged from its own little bubble. You're literally outside of time and space there. It's such a beautiful, magical space. Have you been there?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay. It's really like a portal. It's literally, you're operating, like, even you don't know anything that's happening in the outside world. It's really crazy. It's my home. It's really my home. But I was living there and I did not have social media. I barely used internet. I was unplugged. The only work I did was word of mouth. Of course, people would come from the outside to do some retreats with us, but it was just from word of mouth, and barely had maybe Facebook just for market stuff, like community stuff. But I was really, it was all spirit work and energy work. That's why I was saying I was really living from the upper realms. And I was like, nah, there's something fake about marketing. I don't resonate with the world. Even people can go a bit into extreme of like, we don't need money. So there could be some hippie mentality there as well. And then when I came into the world, I realized that I got to make a choice. And I feel that's what you have to make a choice. Do you want to be completely off grid and you believe that all of this world and anything in it is, evil, dark, it's not spiritual, whatever you want to call it, then live by that choice. If that's the choice you want to make, then don't market yourself, don't do anything. But if you feel like you have a service and you feel like you want to put yourself out there because there's a bigger purpose for it, then it's energy and how you relate to that energy. Same with money. Either you can see it as something that is evil made because it was created by the dark forces and it's codependency and and it's creating all those wars in the world and you want to stay there, or you want to say it's energy and I need it right now to operate in this world and I can use it for my benefit or something else. So same with marketing. It can be either a conscious marketing or it can be an unconscious way. And definitely it's been a process and I still feel like I'm doing it, but it's really shattering those belief systems. And more than anything, again, going back to integrity, are you marketing yourself in a way of, that is not conscious? You're not doing it in integrity with who you are? Or are you doing it in a way that is going to support you and your business and bringing your own identity to it? But also what I noticed is to also be mindful that you're open to change, I feel, and to open to receiving what works and new things. Because also that was another resistance for me. I don't know if you had it, but for a while it's like, I don't want to do thumbnails. Like, I just want to put my face like looking like this on the camera and, don't even want to use my, and I was like, but why? What is that belief system? Like, I know that if I do a thumbnail, it actually can be artistic, and it can actually support the person looking. Because if I were in their shoes, I wouldn't click on a video that, a person's looking like this. So that's what I mean. It's I needed to stretch a little bit my mind and to look into it. But do I do it in a way just copying, or do I do it in something that feels in integrity with me?
Yeah,
For now, I
integrity.
feel it's an integrity. Is that going to change in the future? Maybe I'm open for it as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I definitely had that where I was like, oh, that's for attention grabbing. I don't want to be like those people, you know? Yes, I don't,
Exactly.
yeah. Yep, but now, yeah, now I'm getting more into it and understanding it in a different way. And I guess last question is, why do you share? If there's like a core
Mm.
to that.
Ah, let me feel into that. Because you said core, I felt it in my core. My stomach went like, um, wow. Mm. Yeah, it's fascinating because I feel it comes from within me like that. It's interesting because it's like, a painter that just wants to paint, better than me. I keep saying painter, but you just feel the pull to paint. It's like it's just as if your hand just, goes before you, it just takes you there. I feel the same with sharing. And I always used to tell my husband, like, because my husband is like knows so much, and I used to push him like, come on, share with. It's like, I'm not a sharer, like, just and he's not, but I feel he's a lot of wisdom, and I just trying to grab him to come into my channel. But for me, it's just so natural for me. I feel like it's just so easy, and I keep telling him all I want to do is just share. And I feel so grateful that we have this platform and we have this technology right now that is allowing us to do that, because maybe in other generation, how would I share? I'm like, maybe through writing books, or I don't know, having a radio channel. I don't know, but And then I remember back to when I was a kid, I always used to have cameras. Like, I always loved cameras, and used to like record myself talking of my journeys. So from when I was a kid, I was like, so I realized that's just really natural to me, and that's all I want to do. And to realize that you can do that also as and have it aligned with your business, I feel that's very, very powerful. So you're not just a hobby, but you're doing it because it's your course. It's the most aligned with your passion and your purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one last thing came up because recently
Yeah.
this random stranger was just started talking to me, and he was saying that he thinks that this, I guess, the millennial generation, like I'm 22, like this generation has it a little bit wrong because they think that their job needs to be their passion, but he was trying to like put like his thinking was that those two can be separate, and that there can be a job and then there can be a side passion hobby. What do you think about the concept of passion projects versus work? you know
Yeah, and I think that's where we lost it. I think this is where um when I like if I remove personalities, personas, who said what to it. If I were to just hear that statement, first of all, belief system. So he projected his belief system onto you. His experience, that is fine. But what I feel, what I hear energetically is he is plugged in more into the false matrix, because that is what the false matrix wants you to do. To what your job is, it's something that you're devoted most of your time in. If you're a full-time mom, that is your full-time job. So your job, especially if it's a 9 to 5 job, this is slavery, and this is what they created because they want you to work, 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 follow the system, not have time to be present in your own body, to take time for yourself, to be present with your family. And then they created a system that what allows you to have money is specific jobs that you require. And being in divine expression does not give you money. Like that's the system that got created. So for me, when I hear this, I feel like he's plugged into the prison grid, and he believes that that is the truth and that is the way. Does that mean what happened in his background? I don't know. Did they have it more difficult? Did he have it more difficult? Is that what his father taught him? Did he grow up in, feeling the pressure and the responsibility? I don't know. There's just so many
right.
multi-layered, experiences that could go through. But for me, I feel that that's back to the concept of consciousness. If you want to, because we played in it, like I played a little bit in this where I was like, you know what, I'm going to do something just because I need the money. And I felt like I was dying in the process.
Yeah.
And I was, what I was selling, because everything is an exchange, is not in alignment with who I am. And I felt like it was not allowing me to bring more of my light, So that is the kind of the balance right there. And of course it should challenge. And I think money is another huge topic, because it's like, but I need to do it for money. And I completely understand. Like a lot of people, that's why some people in the spiritual field, it's like, oh no, like you just gotta manifest what you want. And it's like, well, not really. There's specific circumstances that people are in that are no joke. That's what I'm saying. Let's land back into the body. Let's ground a bit into reality. It can't be just like overnight, just do this. There's specifics, especially if you have kids or children that you need to give, you're responsible for. It's not that easy. So yeah, definitely money is a part of it, but I feel it's about transitioning into something, allowing yourself to transition into something that feels more aligned with you and who you are.
Right. I guess, and just one last thing is, what kind of advice would you give somebody that is trying to transition? Like if they're at a job and it's making them feel like death, right? And how do they trust in what is more aligned with them when they don't maybe see how it can make money for them?
Yeah, I feel it's also like a nuanced thing, because it really depends also on the person themselves, what triggers them to change out of a situation. Because what can happen sometimes is that they can stay in it too much because of comfort or fear of the unknown, right? And what would require of them to make that shift? Okay. So for example, I'm going to give an example for me. I got to a point where I kept saying I'm going to transition, and I did. I started, that's what I'm saying. It's like not an overnight thing. So you want to have a plan. You want to have a vision, you want to have a map or a plan of what you can do. If your life affords it, if your life feels like you're not really dependent, you can make that huge shift, you can. But you want to start preparing and planting the seeds to make that shift. But energetically, I feel there has to be this very strong, full body knowing that you are making that jump. And I feel not a lot of people experience that. They stay in between, and that's what doesn't allow them to make the jump. For me, it was literally an overnight. I was like, I am done. Like it was literally a done. I'm like, I am not doing this anymore. Like it was a full body. And I remember even my husband witnessing it, like, oh wow, like okay, maybe that's how it works for me. Maybe other people, but for me, I was like, and that's the force that me being done is what pushed me to do whatever it takes to transition. So that's what I'm saying. Every person is different. It's like that inquiry within of like, what is your personality? What makes you move something? What allows you to make changes? And every person is different in that way. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah. And all right, last question. And I know I keep having a last question, but how does somebody maintain faith just in the spiritual journey? Like this is another process. This transitioning is another process on the spiritual journey. We're all in the spiritual journey, but how does one maintain faith that the universe got your back? When you want to be done or you want to move into something else, for example.
Really, I feel, first of all, like to be also like very grounded and realistic, that faith is something that is like a muscle that you build. It's like kind of what we're saying, your relationship with your spirit. And I feel you keep getting tested, because the thing is that this life is like maybe you reached faith in that area and then you click that code. So let's say give example of the career. So you took that jump and you're like, whoa, I'm a faithful person. I made that jump. I trusted the unknown. You think that that's what it is, but then you're going to get maybe tested with something else that could be maybe a health issue. And then you're like, oh, wow, that's like another level. So I feel these are all tribunals, like all initiations that we have to have. But from really what I know and what I experienced is that there literally, I know this might sound cliche, I don't know, but I realized that there's no other way. There's no other choice. Either you stay in fear, and the fear is going to be more painful because the level of resistance and stress that's going to be in it, and trying to control and trying to figure it out and do whatever, is going to cost you more than actually to surrender. And that is why you get into points, a specific time maybe in your life, where there's no choice but to surrender. There's no other way but to trust.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I wonder, of course, there's a reason why we get tested by the universe, but sometimes it feels like, very, very testing, like people are put under so much pressure. And then it's also maintaining that, oh, but this universe is love. And sometimes for myself, I have a hard time trusting that it is love, when an experience is not feeling great, Yeah.
Yeah, that's where that's the thing. For me, I got to a point where I had to not decondition from the human belief system, decondition from spirituality and spiritual concepts. I swear, because I got to a point I realized there was this cognitive like they're not working. And that's the thing I always tell people, don't take something because somebody said it. Even now, you and I are talking. Don't take our words for it. Go for what works for you. Implement it. You be the experiment, because what works for you might not work for another person. And those concepts, they literally created more mental loops. And the biggest one is not good enough. I see it everywhere. I swear, like,
Yep.
oh, but I'm not attracting what I want.
Mhm.
That's because I'm not worthy of it. If you're worthy of it, you will attract what you want. BS. Fully, I gotta say it. That's the thing. That's the trap with those law of attract. There's a lot of misunderstandings, and they've created a lot of like, so that means I'm not good enough. Why is it not coming? Or the universe, or if you experience something so dark, but that's, God, like I'm supposed to be thankful for God. Well, that goes back to the thing of like, if we understand the reality of this realm, that there's a prison grid and there are dark forces that are messing with us. This is a fact. I can't be in that moment. Like, that's what I'm saying. Somebody now just lost their child. Are you going to sit next to them and tell them, say thank you because God loves you? No, you're going to be like, cry it out, be angry, yell if you want, because that is damn painful. Or somebody that got raped, you're not going to tell them, oh, you created this in that moment. You know how much, because you know how many people, like victims of abuse, they already think that. They already think that it's because of them they got raped. So you come and tell them, you created this? What are you doing? Yeah, we can look at it from a bigger perspective. On a soul level, this had to happen. But you did not consciously create this or choose this. You did not. And that is damn painful. And you want to go through the victim mode for a little bit. You need to, because that is where you're going to heal. And then you want to make the choice to choose something else for yourself. So I feel like these concepts, when you're saying about the universe, I don't think that's the case, because I think that it's not, even when you mention like your faith is getting tested by universe, I don't think that the faith is being tested by the universe itself. Like the universe is putting that experience for us to test it. I think it's just that the mechanics of this world make us all the time have to choose between love, like faith, or fear, because we're in a very dense fear-based reality. So we're constantly tested just for being in that frame, but not by like the universe and the God or anything like that. And that shifts everything as well in terms of like perspective. And to see that this is about us choosing being devoted to awareness and consciousness, back to that. And the only way is your own faith towards spirit and your own faith towards life itself. It's not towards anything else, but towards life.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot. Had some thoughts, but they disappeared. So why did we, come here, to this 3D dense place where it's like a fight for our consciousness? Did we come here for just, this is some kind of like really tough challenge where we're not up there in the other realms where it's a lot easier to access and stay in love?
I'm like debating whether to answer or not answer the full
Or just leave it like
thing,
that?
because
Yeah.
it's a very big like research or translation that I'm going through. And I feel like it's a big transition because I've also done a video about this, where is Earth a prison
Right,
or
I
a
watched
school? Yeah, because a lot of, and I was in it, like, you know, Earth is a school and Earth is a school, and we came in because we want to learn as a soul. And then I'm like, but it's also a prison. And the main difference between them, actually, if you were to compare, prison and school actually look the same, which is funny, right? If you look at it, schools in the system, they look the same. They don't let you, whatever. But the difference is that in a school, you can hopefully go out. You can leave if you want. In a prison, you can't. And for example, the reincarnations that happen are actually soul traps. Because when you're wanting to leave the earth and you get met by what seem like spiritual guides or by the light, but what they're doing, actually, you don't want to go there, because if you go there, you're just going to come back into the reincarnation. And there's different philosophies, because some people say like reincarnation is actually how you refine yourself, but actually reincarnations is also a soul trap, because they have access to that exit, and we're not able to exit. That's why it's a prison. So there's several perspectives, and I'm still fully, and that's why it's something that I felt like I was not ready to fully reveal as a truth on my channel yet, because I want to get as much of the translation as I can, because not to create confusion, but it's definitely something that we're transitioning out of. Just believing that this world is just, you know, a school, and then, okay, so you want to be raped. And I'm giving extreme cases because it is the case. And if you're looking at child trafficking and the whole cult that's happening, this is not, come on, guys, like, this is not God's act. You know what I mean? Like, it's not. We can't fool ourselves there. This is horror. So when we get into those realities, there's a cognitive dissonance, or like discrepancy that happens in us, especially the ones on the path. And so I just want to say one thing to just end it with, is that for me, what I see it as is that it's about being a warrior of God. We chose to come in to be the warriors of God within that prison. That's the best way that I can put it. Can I go further into it? Not yet, because I'm still translating, breaking it down. But that's really the meaning of it, is that we chose, because I remember also the calling. I remember the calling. Like, you're going in. I remember it. So you're going, and you're going to be a warrior of God. And if you notice it, that this is what we're here for. And again, I keep saying that we're here to be devoted to consciousness. It's not a joke. It's very serious. I mean, we don't want to take life seriously, but it's a serious responsibility. We've been given the keys to the divine doors, to divine intelligence, and it's our responsibility to treat it with respect, really, and to take it with honor, and to lead this world with that respect of how devoted we are to God.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be ending the interview here.
Yeah.
So all the links for Natalia will be down below. So YouTube channel, website. You have Instagram? Anything like this?
No social media.
No social media. Okay, so YouTube and website.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay, so I'll put those down below, and I'll try to link any of the specific videos mentioned in this one. So if you want more information, you can go to Natalia's channel. And yeah, anything else on your offerings or anything like that?
No, that is amazing. For my offerings, yeah, it's all on the website. I do, you know, the quantum energy work. I do the one-on-one guidance as well for either light body activation, or if you're needing to translate and decode specific phenomena or experiences you're going through on this path to expand your awareness. And I also have retreats coming up for Peru also, so you can check the website below if you're interested in meeting in person and doing some of that journeys together. But yeah, besides that, like, I am just really grateful to have had that conversation. Really, it was powerful. And I said, hi, we were outside of time and space as well. I think we went just
2 hours of
yeah, so that was beautiful. And you hold such a beautiful space as well. So it's thank you so much for that. I'm really grateful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for answering the call. All right.
Yeah.
Well, this will be goodbye for now.
Okay. Bye.
Thank Thank you so much for getting to the end of this episode. If you'd like to support the podcast, rate, review, comment, let me know what you think, and you can visit vibrationtranslation.com to purchase from the shop or donate. All links are down below, and I sincerely appreciate any and all of your support. Thank you, and I'll see you for the next one.